My guests today are filmmakers Ella Dorman Geich and Clara Gallagher, and their short film Back of the Net. Now, Ella is a writer, performer, and creative producer working across theater, screen, and audio, and her writing has been described as impassioned by The Guardian. Her Ofcom awarded 5-star stage play Trade went on tour to sell out audiences. And as an actor, she starred in the BBC Radio 4 drama Song of the Reed, and she's performed in 2 multi-award-winning short films, including The Boy with a Camera for a Face, which was broadcast on Channel 4, and she wrote and stars in the brand new short film Back of the Net. Also with us today is Clara Gallagher, an author, writer, and director, and she started acting as a child, and growing up, she trained both in Croatia and London. She was a founding member of the first improv theater company in Croatia for over 2 years. Her versatile training culminated in a master's degree at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art in London, where she also began writing and directing. She works across stage, screen, and voiceover, both as an actor and creative. They are here to discuss their short film, Back of the Net. So without further ado, let's welcome filmmakers Ella Dorman Geich and Clara Gallagher to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. What a lovely intro.
Well, you're very, very welcome. And I have to ask it. So, Ella, I know that you wrote this incredible story. So where did you get the idea for it? And is it possibly based on a true story?
Great question. So it is partly inspired by my own relationship with my grandmother. However, slight twist, my grandmother was not a celebrated footballer. So in the story, it's a relationship between a young footballer, and her grandmother, who was a celebrated footballer of her time. And that part of the story was really influenced by the incredible triumph of the Lionesses in 2022 when we won the Euros. And the new platform that was given to the Lionesses of the 1970s, who still hadn't received their caps at the time. And it really made me think of the legacy that just has not lived on in the same way as their male counterparts, of course. And yeah, how women's football has very much been brushed under the carpet for so many years. And I wanted to reflect that in Maggie's character, and also show the gendered care roles that are still very much relevant in today's 2020s Britain. Like, obviously, we're getting closer towards some semblance of gender equality, but really it tackles, pardon the pun, how it's still not equal. Football is something that is encouraged so much more within male groups and to boys, and girls are still encouraged to care for their elders, which is important, but I think equal weight should be put on both, and that was my goal with the film. Oh my god, I just can't help it with the puns.
You showcased all of that in this film perfectly, which is one of the reasons why I love Back of the Net. Now, Clara, what intrigued you about the script to want to direct it?
I thought it was a really rich story with a lot of layers that could be explored in a short form, which was an interesting creative challenge. But also what really drew me to Ella's script was this kind of central tension between this sort of career ambition and care responsibilities, which there was something really human about it, and there was no sort of right or wrong. Things weren't just like black or white. There's a lot of nuance in it, and that's something I'm really interested in. And I'm generally really interested in exploring female-led narratives and exploring gender as such, and gender roles and gender inequality. And I thought football was a really great kind of vessel, as something that's really heavily gendered in our world, to explore that.
Yeah, and again, that's everything. All of these elements came together so perfectly in this film. Now, in the past year, I have seen a few films where dementia has played a role, but each film focused on a sub element like the caregiver or the struggles of the family. But in Back of the Net, it was the lead character's ambition to focus on being a footballer, just like her grandmother, because I looked at it as we all have dreams and then life happens. Uh, why did you want to explore, and this can go to both of you, why did you want to explore this element of the storyline? Because I loved it, because when we think about dementia, it's always focused on the caregiver in taking care of that person, but we never think about what about that person's hopes and dreams? Are they putting them on hold? Are they finding a way to weave through this situation and somehow make it happen?
Yeah. Oh, I love how you spoke about that. I think it's very true. I think there can be a tendency to reduce carers to purely just the role of being a carer. And I think that's true also of doctors and nurses, in that they don't have life outside of that. Um, so I suppose it is really looking at that tension of being torn between two worlds. Um, and that's what we really wanted to hone in on, in that when somebody is a carer, they have ambition outside of that and a world outside of that. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, life
Yeah.
is, usually just millions of shades of grey, right? So this is like one of those situations where it's no one's fault, but equally no one, it's difficult for everyone, but we didn't want to portray anyone as like a victim or a villain. That is just, the cards they were dealt, and that is life, so it's about how you kind of play those cards.
But you also brought in an element, and you have to watch this film very closely to see if you can pick it up. And I noticed it because there are three caregivers in this film. There's the sister who is a nurse who helps when she can, but she's pulling double duty at home and at the hospital. The brother who seems to avoid being around to take care of his grandmother, which I love the way that you portrayed him, because that element shows in many cases that when you have the age groups of the two sisters and then the sisters are going to be the ones that are going to be relied upon more than the brother, because in society it's like, well, the male is the breadwinner, so to speak. So is the sister who's the nurse. And then you have the younger sister where, oh, she's just playing football all the time. She has nothing else to do, so she can stay home and take care of the grandmother while we go do our jobs. And I thought the whole dynamic of all three of them were perfectly placed, because if you watch each one, you pick up a different element of their own mindset and the things that they know they need to do, the things they either try to find a way to avoid, like the brother, and then those that where the whole situation is just put on them and they feel like there's no way to escape. And that's how I looked at a lot of these. So Ella, you wrote it, and Clara, you directed it. How were you able to find the balance on film?
Hmm. Yeah. Do you want to answer that, Clara?
I mean, we can both answer it.
Yeah.
I think so. I think what was really essential to this process was our sort of development process before we even started pre-production and shooting, etc. Because it was quite a nice kind of collaborative. Obviously, Ella did all the writing, so I'm taking no credit for that. But we had quite a nice sort of like conversation over a few months, really, a couple of months, where we really discussed the script and we were really sort of like refining the details of, because it's a short film, it's 15 minutes, and there's so many things that we open up. So it's like, how do we do it in the most precise, concise way, squeeze as much juice as possible out of it, but also, not do it in like an obvious way. So I think that was probably the most important part, I would say, really, really refining it and really picking those words and, those moments. And I think for me as a director as well, um, it was constantly, I was constantly thinking about portraying these family dynamics as real in a way that there was a lot of love and warmth in it, but also, there's a lot of tension as well with
Yeah,
just a
and that
family.
tension was
Yeah.
disruption. The tension was described as disruption.
Mm, yeah. And I think visually these things are quite, I think the combination of ET's incredible cinematography and our editor Emma's, you know, cut, all of that just kind of, it just found this like really beautiful rhythm where there's two contrasting worlds almost. Like the world where Maya is, living her dream, feeling fulfilled. And then there's like this kind of disruptive world of, you know, real life duties,
But
responsibilities.
but what really brought one of the major elements that brought this whole story together, because I watched this film multiple times and I kept going back and I was looking at scenes. I'd pause it and I'm like, okay, why did they do that? I know there's a reason because you never put anything on film without a reason. And this, this, ladies and gentlemen, if you're a young filmmaker, you're up and coming, and you're trying to find films that you could maybe learn from, Back of the Net is a film you can learn a lot from. Not just storytelling and writing, but character placement, framing. This is a film you want to watch. So there is a scene when the team shows up to practice for their big game, but the pitch was already taken by the boys' team. What I loved was the framing of Maya is standing outside the pitch gate looking forward. It's framed so perfectly, but it still proves that many female athletes are still on the outside looking in. So, Clara, is that the reason why you shot that?
Yes, 100%. Yeah. There's this physical barrier between her and her dream, and hearing these male voices, again, it's not to say these are the villains of the story. Like, it's just, these are the systemic issues that we have. And it's this like choir of male voices, and like it's her on her own on the other side, unable to get in, you know?
And
So
I
yeah,
thought it
we're
was,
intentional with all these things.
yes, and I thought it was interesting that the coach said, "Don't worry about it. We'll go to the park." And but deep inside, she was put off because it's like, here's us women getting shoved off again,
Mm.
and so I'm like, yeah, but it mimics. It still, sadly, mimics real life,
Mm.
and there's two scenes that come to mind, and I want to ask why they were shot this way because I'm so interested in this. In the very beginning in the film, where Maya and her grandmother are sitting on the couch eating ice cream, I noticed that the framing, both characters are here, and there's this a lot of this upper wall space. Now, tell me why you did that.
It's funny because that is the shot that I kind of had in mind from the get go. That is something I saw straight away while reading the script. So I just kind of, when you, as a filmmaker, you just kind of get those sort of like flashes, those ideas, and you're like, yep, this just feels right. I knew that I really wanted to clearly convey that contrast between the outdoor sort of football world where Maya thrives and the sort of claustrophobic home that kind of feels suffocating slightly. It is cozy, it's familiar, but it's a bit claustrophobic. So I think that shot in particular really kind of entails all these different elements in a sense that like it is really comfortable and cozy. There's this soft light, it's a warm day, they're eating ice cream, they're laughing. But the home is so present visually, right? There's this
Oh
big
yeah,
wall. this like old fashioned wallpaper in her granny's house, you know? Um, so that was kind of the idea behind it.
Yeah, because I went back after I probably saw the film twice before I went back to that scene and I just paused it, and I'm like, okay. And you said what I was thinking. They're sitting on the couch, cozy. But if you're chasing your dreams, that also explains what the comfort zone is. The
Mm.
upper space above them is the world that is there for you to conquer. So are you going to get off the couch and go conquer it? Or are you just going to sit there and get sucked in to
I
whatever
love that.
life is handing you? And I looked at that, I was like,
Mm.
there's a reason why it's filmed this way. And
Yeah.
that's how I looked at it.
Mm.
I love that reading. That's
Yeah.
really, really cool.
But
I'm gonna
Yeah.
start
yeah,
saying
go ahead,
now.
Ella.
Yeah, I love that reading as well. And I think it actually speaks volumes the fact that they are watching men play football in that scene. So when you press play, it's again male voices, male commentator commenting on the men on screen. And I think it actually, in a way, foreshadows that later scene, which you just spoke about, where Maya is locked out of the pitch. She's on the outside looking in again.
Yeah, and the other scene that I really loved in the areas of framing was when Maya and her grandmother are sitting at the little table in the kitchen in front of the window. Because I looked at it as like, oh, because I love when a scene is framed and it's framed for a particular reason. Most audiences won't know why, but there's a reason for it. And I love the fact that both characters are facing one another. Here's this little table and here's this perfect window. And I was like, the whole world is
Yeah,
is waiting for Maya.
yeah. And also there's this shot of Maggie looking out this window with this slightly glazed look on her face where she is stuck in this home looking out the window. Um, and I think again, the idea was again to kind of like really draw attention to the contrast between this freedom, the world that's awaiting, versus this old stuffy home, you know?
Well, yeah, but
Um,
but that was a very serious scene because that's when here's that window, the whole world. I mean, Maya's like, it's signifying that's her dream to be out there. But then the reality is when her grandmother looks at her, and right then and there, she's like, her dementia is starting to get worse.
yeah.
And then the reality of life happens showed up at that very time, bursting that inner thought or bubble she may have had.
Mm. I think it's also like Ella's like written that scene so beautifully because it really it's so bittersweet. You know, there's this moment of closeness, um, moment of humor between them, a bit of banter, and then this cold shower because this is a really significant moment in the film because that's the first time Maggie doesn't recognize Maya. Um, and I think like Ella's done an amazing job just sort of really condensing such a big moment in such a simple scene. It was quite a big one to shoot, quite an important one, I think.
Yeah, and Ella, I loved your acting in this film because it wasn't just the dialogue, it was the body language, it was the facial expressions that told even more. And we could literally just read the scene on your face.
Wow, thanks. That does mean a lot. It's interesting actually talking about that scene at the breakfast table because I remember very vividly that that's the first scene we shot of the film.
Yeah.
And yeah, I remember it's the first scene, it's certainly the first scene between myself and Maureen. And just quick shout out to Maureen who played Maggie. She's fantastic to work with, and yeah, really recommend her as an amazing actor. And yeah, that was the first scene we shot, and I just immediately felt an amazing relationship between myself and Maureen and as Maggie. And yeah, I felt really like confident with that first shot, even though it's obviously not chronologically the first shot of the film, of course, but I remember it being the first scene between me and her that
Yeah,
we shot.
I thought the scene with Gavin, I
Yeah.
paused it and I'm like, okay, because I knew about the whole the gender equality in the storyline. So I'm looking at this and I'm like, uh-huh. Both sisters are on each side of him, and the feeling of that scene is that both are regulated to the background.
Mm, mm, mm.
And because what? He's loud, he's boisterous, uh he he knows what they're both thinking. He's trying to make small talk and make light of the situation with the grandmother, but he's also trying to avoid it at the same time.
Mm, mm, mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think making that scene as concise as possible was tricky. It used to be a lot longer, actually. And, as Clara mentioned with our development process, we just, cut scenes down and down and down. And I really wanted to keep that scene in there because I think it is a showcase of, again, sort of the dramatic irony of the situation as well. The audience obviously know the journey that Maya is on and like the stakes of the situation with a scout coming. But the father doesn't know, but the father is clearly massively into football. So it's that sort of like very poignant dramatic irony that we were trying to get across in a concise 2-minute scene, maybe even less than. But yeah.
Yeah, there's almost
Yeah.
a secret story of the father in this film because here are three siblings and to me I was looking at it in his mind there are three other people that can take care of his mother
Mm.
and that's just a real life situation.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, again, it was really important to us not to portray him as like a stereotype, as someone who's aggressive, who's, I don't know, a drunk. We really wanted to like stay away from any sort of like obvious stereotypical versions of these characters. So then we kind of like wanted to dig deeper and see, again, it's a mirroring scene to basically the one when she speaks to Billy, who's actually her first cousin, but could be her brother as well.
Right.
When he's sort of, avoiding, he's also like being nice, but very elegantly avoiding any responsibility,
Yeah,
right?
because
So
he was rushing her off the phone.
Mm.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And this is a similar situation. And again, it's football that like ties them together.
Yeah,
Um,
and I love the way this whole thread works in this film, and and I think one of the moments in this film that I wish everybody will, when they see this film, they need to understand what they need to do if it ever happens to them, because the
Mm.
sister tells Maya that what she is doing is not important, and but she was just really acting out under stress. I don't feel that she actually meant what she said because she, because she wishes that she could go back in time to focus on football herself. But anybody who is chasing their dreams, and if anybody, and it's usually a family member, that will say something negative that, go get a real job,
Mm. Mm.
what you're doing, stop chasing silly dreams.
Mm.
My deal is this: do not allow that to take hold of you. If you are chasing your dream, go chase your dream, because
Mm.
what happens is when someone is chasing their dream, it's usually a family member that gets uncomfortable because deep down they wish they could, so they're pouring water on somebody else.
Mm.
So when I saw
mm,
that scene, I'm like, okay, I just looked at it as the population of the world. If you're chasing your dream, do not allow people like that to deter what your
Mhm.
dream is and go after it. But you kind of bring it full circle at the end of the film.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is that age old thing that we hurt those closest to us. And I think also, like, in a time of extreme, like, stress and pressure that Connie is under, so Connie's my sister, um, everything else sort of goes out the window and your tunnel vision, and you are cruel in those moments. But I think that is what drama is able to illuminate. I mean, I always say that drama is life just with sort of the boring bits taken out.
Yeah, but here's
Yeah.
what's cool. You mirrored that with Maya's grandmother because boy, the most poignant point in this film was when her grandmother looks at Maya and goes, "Don't waste it."
Mm,
And I
mm,
went,
mm,
"Oh, that out of all the characters, it was her that said it, giving
mm,
her the okay to go chase your dream. I
mm,
don't care who you are, and if you're chasing your dream, there's that one person that everybody wants to where they tell them it's okay, go chase it.
mm,
It's like
Mm.
the fuel to a rocket. If
mm,
it's almost not that we need permission, but it's
mm,
great to have someone that believes in you enough to go for it. Go for
mm.
it. And
Yeah.
and when I saw that, I was like, oh, this film is a jewel. So, you know, and it was an absolute beautiful scene. I actually went back and played it a few times just so I could watch it because I just love things like that. But I have to ask, how did you cast people like Tom Goodman Hill, Maureen Casey, Lucy Jane Ray? You had Mookie Zubas. Just a stellar cast in this film.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, they're all brilliant. We kind of it was through different sort of it was different approaches to casting, I guess. Tom and Ella did the BBC radio drama together, right?
yeah.
Years
So we
ago.
already had a relationship, and he's such a fantastic actor, obviously, as everyone knows. The world has seen him now on this little drama called Baby Reindeer. Don't know if you would have heard of it. And yeah, he's an amazing person to work with, so generous. And I sent him the script a while ago. He's one of the first people I sent it to, and he was immediately like, "Yep, I want to do it. Let's go."
He's
And
such a
then,
lovely guy.
mm,
Well, Clara,
Yes,
what was it like working with such an all-star cast?
it was brilliant because I think for me, what's also really important is obviously there are loads of talented people out there, but I really want to create environments and sets where everyone is just nice and everyone's a decent person and respects one another. And I think that really, the fact that all the people who worked in this film were just really lovely people, really reflected on the whole process. And I think the sort of vibe on set was really, I just genuinely believe in sort of positive energy, and I think positive sort of reinforcement on set, because I think that's what fuels the work as well. But it also is just then a pleasure for for everyone involved. And I knew Lucy and Mookie in person. Um, Before we cast them, I actually knew them quite well from this acting workshop that we used to go to. So I knew them quite well as actors, but also as people within that setting, and I knew they were real like pleasure and joy to work with. And then Maureen, we actually went through a friend of mine who's a casting professional, and I kind of asked, like, do you have anyone in mind who might be good for this? And then she gave me a few names, and then we did a bit of research, and then we ended up um, going with Maureen, and I'm really happy that we did.
Oh, everything just works so well because, and like I said before we started the interview, This is a true short film. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. It has the look, the feel. Um, it's just an absolute job well done for both of you and your whole team. And I have to ask very quickly here because I always like to see a short film that has a very particular look to it. And I think this film has that look because of the colorization. Did you use or go by a particular color palette to tell the story as well?
Yeah, I'm very, very visual. And so, like, I love talking about framing and color, and because I am very intentional with every single detail. Some would argue too intentional and too detail focused. Um, but I always saw this film in that sort of color palette. Like, I always saw it as this sort of like soft pastel, muted sort of world. Um, so the color grade was really important. Obviously, cinematography was super important as well, and ET was fantastic in sort of helping me fulfill this vision and like make it, realize it. And then when it came to the grade, I'd done a lot of research, had a lot of references that I sent over to our editor, who also did the grade, and she just nailed it.
Yeah, I like the fact that the colorization gives this film this very it's the look of natural light,
Yeah.
and that's what brings that softness to this whole film. I understand that the film was distributed to over 20,000 school children in France. What was the goal there?
Yeah, I mean, that was purely thanks to This Is England Festival, which is an incredible festival in Rouen. I always say that name wrong. I've probably just said it wrong then. Rouen,
Mhm.
which is just an hour away from Paris in France. Beautiful city and amazing people that run that festival. And they've got a relationship with many schools across France. So their aim is to distribute films, British films, to young French audiences because they believe that they have something very profound to teach them about filmmaking, which is I didn't know about, to be fair, before we entered this festival. I didn't know that there's, for the last kind of more recent years, there's been such a tradition of celebrating British film in France, especially amongst younger people. Um, and yeah, there was a Q&A afterwards, not with us actually. There was just a discussion group afterwards with a lot of the students, and we met the teachers at the festival. And yeah, they just said that they gave incredible feedback on the film, and really a lot of things that they hadn't considered, including, the disparity of access girls and boys have to football. I was talking to a teacher, and she said that a lot of my male students hadn't considered that. So it's great to know that it's having that impact, that it's having a social cultural impact, as well as it just being a piece of entertainment. We want it's an issue based film, so we want it to kind of like shift perspectives on football and caring and many aspects. Yeah.
Well, I would expect that this film is going to be making a very large round through the film festival circuits this year, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we've already done uh, just under 20 festivals, and we're also going to Poppy Jasper Festival in San Jose, just outside of San Francisco, in April of this year. And then we're still waiting on quite a few more in the US and yeah, across the world. So keep an eye on our Instagram because that's where we do all our announcements.
Yeah, I know I will. And ladies and gentlemen, Back of the Net is a pertinent short film exploring the journey of Maya, a passionate young footballer torn between her aspirations to go professional and her care responsibilities to her grandmother, who was once a skilled footballer of her time, but now dealing with dementia. I love this short film. The cinematography is perfect. The framing of the characters and the scenes flow from frame to frame, telling the story in such a way that we can clearly understand the emotion and the mindset of each character. I love films that showcase a character who has a desire or a dream they want to accomplish, and in many cases, no one is there to encourage them as life sometimes gets in the way. But there is inspiration in this film with the grandmothers whose memory is slowly fading, but is still able to encourage Maya to go after her dreams. I see this film going a very long way in 2025, and every audience will remember this film once they see it for a very long time. And hopefully, this film will continue to inspire many young ladies out there to chase their dreams and forget about it being a male dominant world. Go after your dreams. And in some cases, if you have to push them out of the way, do so. Because that's what it takes sometimes when you have to chase that desire of your heart. And I want to thank you both, Ella and Clara, for sharing this short film with me today.
Wow.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for your time. And thank you for speaking so highly of the film. We're really moved. I think we both are like really blown away by your words and your genuine enthusiasm for the film.
Well, you are very, very welcome. And I expect to see this film become a multi-award winner. And I know that it's making the rounds in the BAFTA and the BIFA qualifying festivals. And I'm going to believe that this film is going to be qualified in both of those realms. And ladies and gentlemen, when you get a chance to see Back of the Net, if you're ever at a film festival and it is showing, make sure that you are seated in the theater, because you're going to see a film that, like I said, you're going to remember this one for a long time. And it's a great inspiration. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for watching and listening. And as for me, you're either going to see me at the movies or from the red carpet.